Hello and welcome to the Buttcast, episode 11, I do believe. And today's special guest is Ken.
Hi, I'm Ken. I thrive on awkwardness.
Then this is definitely the podcast for you. Welcome. Let's get started by asking, what was your first exposure to Yu-Gi-Oh?
My first exposure. I want to say when it was around 10-year-old. Little 10-year-old me. Wake up every Saturday, hop on TV. Since my family was, not as rich as every kid and had satellite TV, we had what you would call Cubo. But every single Saturday, there was a channel called either 33.3 or 33.1. And it would just either played some really cool cartoons that, only once a week that you could experience. You had to be poor in order to experience this. It's great, I swear. The first experience was the first ever episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! The original series. That was my first experience. The first series was really weird. There was no construct game, card game of it. It was just, how Yugi and the gang just go around, dicking on Kaiba. Oh, I'm sorry, are we allowed to curse? Or...
You're allowed to curse,
okay. Yeah, basically, beating up Kaiba and how... I think it was the first episode where Kaiba ripped Yugi's grandpa's, blue eyes.
Yeah.
And so, he had to get back at him by obliterating his mind with Exodia, sending him to the Shadow Realm. That was my first experience.
Do you have any vague... As a kid, were you like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome? Or...
God, no. No. Oh my god, even... Not as much now, but even back then, holy hell. It was either you go into Pokemon or you get, picked out as for being that one weird kid playing Yu-Gi-Oh! But at that time, in my opinion, you were cooler if you played Yu-Gi-Oh! Because who the cares about a yellow rat? I kinda do, but you know what? I rather care about my blue eyes, kicking butt.
I remember, a lot of the people I've been talking to, I kind of started remembering my own origin story a little better. Which was, I started watching the show like everybody else, and I'm pretty sure what was on, I don't know if it was reruns or what it was, but the first thing I ever started watching was the original series, but it was somewhere somewhere in there. And in fact, I remember not particularly liking the show.
Really?
I don't think I particularly liked it at all.
Dang,
I
that's
think I
interesting.
liked the Pokemon way more. I think Bakugan and Beyblade and all those. I feel like I liked all of them better than Yu-Gi-Oh!
We're gonna have to start at Yu-Gi-Oh! Because if we talk about the other stuff, I will divert into those stuff. They were awesome. Bakugan and... I don't know about Beyblade much, but Bakugan was awesome. They had a cool premise, they had a cool, toy line, and it works. The game didn't work, but it works. It sold to kids. It
works as toys.
It preyed on our inhibition of wanting more. How there's, gotta chase the rare stuff, But the card game itself, it was really a mess, because how the hell, for kids, you have to roll the Bakugan itself into the metal field sensor, and half the time, you can barely even do that, because it would just veer off into the right, into the left, and then you end up, picking up your own Bakugan and throwing at each other.
Yeah.
That's how it ends most of the time during my childhood.
I have a little anecdote about Bakugan specifically.
Shoot.
Which, as a kid, I also, like everyone else, had some Bakugan. And I had at my house, I had the really fancy Bakugan thing that has how do I describe this? So it had the little, U-shaped tube thing that you could put 3 Bakugan in. And it was the one where you could put a bunch of those, and you could turn it, and the things would flip out in front.
Oh, that's cool. I seen those
So you could store a whole bunch of Bakugan in it, and then you could pull out the little, I'll call them sleeve, of 3 to take with you. And so I did. I brought my sleeve of 3 Bakugan to school with me one day, and I was so happy. And then I went to the bathroom, and because it barely fit in my pocket to begin with, somehow, I'm not sure how, when I flushed and I pulled up my pants, it fell out of my pocket and into the toilet and just disappeared.
Oh, that's terrible. That's
gone forever.
Oh, see, if I would have done that, I would have just been in shock. I would have just tried to my hardest in the restroom to get them back. No, they'll never return.
I was like genuinely like, who do I call to get these back? Like, what do I do? And then I realized there's no hope.
There's no hope. At that point, they're gone. Out.
They're
skedaddle.
gone.
Deuces.
Yep. So that was my Bakugan experience. Anyway, but when did that, awareness of Yu-Gi-Oh turn into you first encountering a Yu-Gi-Oh card?
Okay. When did it translate for me into getting a card? Oh. I wouldn't say it's the first show. Not the first series. I want to say like around 5Ds. So from watching the show into 5Ds, from the first series all the way into, Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, that's when I actually picked up the card game. My first ever deck, because I got swindled from the neighborhood kid that would play with me, was Ice Barriers. I love Ice Barriers. Their whole entire theme was awesome to me. I would beg my mom for money whenever I can to buy the neighborhood kids pre-constructed Ice Barrier deck. Even though at the time it was dog shit. It was terrible. If I had the knowledge I had now, I would slap myself. But
Ice Barrier has always been absolutely terrible.
Hey, you shut up. Anyways, what's it called? Whenever that was the first, card that I obtained. It was a pre-constructed, unfinished, terribly unfinished version of Ice Barriers. It had a bunch of jank stuff. At that time, I didn't even know the rules of Yu-Gi-Oh! Then I didn't know the actual TCG. So obviously, I had 4 cards instead of 3 sometime. So I didn't have any of the Ice Bear synchros, which was unfortunate. Those were the chase after, right? You got Bryonak, you got Trishula, you got Gungnir. I didn't have a single one. I didn't have a single one of them. I just had the monsters, the main deck monsters, and some of the spells, and that was it. Me thinking I was the hot shit would take that deck into school sometime, and then I would play it against other kids. Other kids that actually knew what they were doing would wipe me out of existence with their better deck. So I had to get good. That's the saying, right? Nowadays, skill issues, gotta get good.
Yeah.
And so I would scroungle more money as much as I can. Sometimes, how back in elementary school you had to pay, you had to bring lunch money and stuff. My mom would give me lunch money. I would never actually get lunch at all and just skip lunch altogether and just save that money up until I can buy more Ice Barrier deck cards instead of actual playable cards. I still lose because Ice Barrier, for God's sake, Konami, what are you doing? Yeah.
I admire the commitment though.
Thank you.
The commitment. When the Ice Barrier structure deck came out, did you have a nostalgia wave and think about trying to pick it up again?
Actually, so that's actually a really good talking point. The announced Ice Barrier structure deck, I heard about it a year before it was announced, right?
Yeah.
Whenever the Reddit was doing when Konami was doing that thing with Reddit, voted which structure deck could get a reprint or whichever archetype.
What archetype should get a structure deck?
I was so hyped that Ice Bear was winning, which was funny because they were winning because it was memeable.
Yeah,
it was only winning because of me. I was like, oh my god, they're getting new support. This is so cool. So, I would check up on the Ice Bear structure deck every so often on YGO organization, seeing how the new stuff would come in. And I think I left Yu-Gi-Oh! Around the time of Zexals, nearing the beginning of Zexals, all the way until all the Ice Bear structure deck, which is a long period of time. So I completely forgot everything. So whenever the Ice Bear structure deck did come out, I was so happy. So I had to go and pick up one, and then la-di-da-di-da. From that structure deck on, I started picking up Yu-Gi-Oh! Again to actually learn how to play competitively and collect and sell and buy, etc., etc. What I should have done was bought a better structure deck because that one was dookie too. Oh, I don't know what there's something with Konami and hating Ice Bears. If you know Ice Bears, they suck to begin with, right?
Yeah.
You could give them any support, and they would still suck.
They have a Rhoda that's not once per turn.
True.
And it's even it doesn't even have a level restriction, does
There's
it?
no restriction.
No.
Not just add an Ice Bear. Even that card couldn't save the whole entire archetype.
They've also got some of the best synchros in the game.
Didn't help. Jack shit.
There's a lot of crazy things about them that it's just terrible.
Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Doesn't help that Konami loved restricting, like, new supports for some reason. They kept on restricting some of the effects of the new support of Ice Bear. Like, we got like a 1-card starter now, which can get us into any of the level 6 or 5 or 7 synchros, right? Mm-hmm. Which are not the one that you want to go into. Most of the time you want to go into Trishula and try to like loop your opponent's hand. But this card, it's not bad, but I wish they had given the level 5 Rhoda, like, it could have been a Cyber Dragon, basically. It could have just special summoned itself if my opponents control a monster. But no, it had also had the restriction of I having to own an Ice Bear monster too. So going first and drawing that card, it's unplayable. Because what are you going to do? You can't, and it can only search if it gets it summon that way. You're not going to normal summon on level 5 monster on your first turn. So yeah, it was dead on arrival.
Yeah.
I also saw the OCG compared to the TCG reprint. We were supposed to get evenly matched.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I was so pissed whenever I found out evenly matched wasn't like, yeah. That would have just sold the deck.
Oh yeah, that would have been so good.
But no.
I would have actually bought it if it had evenly matched.
I know, I could have bought 3. Whatever. It is what it is. I hate Konami.
I want to Don't ban me. I also was very upset about that structure deck, but for perhaps different reasons.
Ooh, what was it?
First of all, obviously, also upset about not having evenly matched in it, like literally everyone else. But for me, well, I guess I need to ask a couple little more questions before I try to go down this little rabbit hole. When you first were interested in Ice Barrier, you knew nothing about the game. What was it that actually enticed you to them? Was it just the art style, or
Gungnir, Dragon of the Ice Bear. That card was so sick. I saw a Ice Bear deck revolving around. I don't remember either it was like a deck revolving around Gungnir or it was a reference to Gungnir in one of the anime. But I remember a specific scene, probably in 5Ds maybe, like some weird, just a lot of cards flashing back and forward. And I remember strictly remembering seeing an Ice Dragon.
Yeah.
I just have a hard-on for Ice Dragons. I just love the 2 combination of Ice and Dragon. Yeah, but anyways, that one is so cool to me. Plus, it's a level 7. You know how the number 7 is always lucky, right? So I just love Gungnir. That's like the whole entire reason why I like Ice Bears.
Interesting.
And then from Gungnir, I just, everything else, they're kind of cool. They're like a pseudo mid-range lockdown deck. I want to say that they don't have like a good thing to hold them down to make them a good deck. They just try to do as much as possible. It kind of like Naturia and how they have like the infinite negate spam. Yeah, Ice Bear.
Pretty apt comparison. Those 2 decks.
Yeah, Ice Bears instead have just their synchro monster. I guess that's where all the power budget went into.
The problem is that all of their extra drag monsters are generic.
Yeah.
So obviously you should just do much.
Yeah.
Naturia, at least they tried to lock it to Earth, but same problem where it's like it's just way easier to play literally anything else to summon these guys. But anyway, for me, the reason I was so upset about the structure deck, is for me, Ice Barrier is one of the decks that has some of the strongest theming and
potential.
No, like mechanical, the way that they are designed kind of fits with the naming convention. Like,
oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like the 3 dragons, how they're each named after like a different type of spears, right? From different type of mythologies.
Not at all what I'm talking about.
Oh, never mind. Well, life lesson.
Thank you for enlightening me though to some more lore about the Ice Barrier.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is, so I love it when they kind of like tie a bunch of things together, especially when they try to tie what the cards do to being what the art kind of does. Like think about like sous ships.
Yeah.
Sous ships, you have the ingredients and you put them together, you stack them on top of each other, and you make the dish.
Ooh,
right? You know how sous ships work?
Yeah. So that's why they're in the Xyz archetype.
Yeah. Literally. And the field spell says if your opponent, removes one of your dishes, then they pay life points equal to its defense points. So they pay for it.
Oh, that's so cool.
And then you summon an ingredient from your hand, one of the normal monsters, I think is what it says. And then you can slap the Xyz monster on top. So they dope. Eat it, pay for it, and then you make them a new one.
Ah, that is so sick. I didn't know that.
So I love when Yu-Gi-Oh! Does stuff like that. But anyway, for Ice Barrier, the gimmick used to be, or at least the implied gimmick, is that you had all these weenies that by themselves basically did nothing. But when a lot of them had effects when you control another Ice Barrier monster, and it puts some minor floodgate on your opponent, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them try to prevent attacking in some way. One of them is literally anti-spell fragrance.
Yeah.
In case you didn't know that. There's one that's gravity bind. So basically a lot of these floodgates, but they are kind of packed into these weeny little dudes. The idea is you have to get a bunch of them up. So it's like a barrier that your opponent can't get through. It's the ice barrier because you're trying to put up a bunch of little guys. It's like ice isn't strong unless there's a lot of ice. And now suddenly it's a problem.
Yep.
Now suddenly you can't get through it.
Yeah. But the problem was that they're not very spammable. Unless you have like certain cards, which like the Magic Triangle basically allows it. I wish they were more like there's less restriction on them. That's how I think less restriction would have made the deck a lot better because they don't have a lot of spammability. And the only card back then was giving them like some type of spammability was the Magic Ice Barrier Triangle. I don't know which one. It basically says like, you know, if you have 3 different type of Ice Barrier names in your hand, you can pop an opponent monster, either a monster or just a card in general. Basically, it was a free special summon and a pop. How that would have been amazing if only it didn't have the restriction of having 3 different names. If it would just 3 Ice Barriers and you could have just pop and get a free summon and then, you know, start setting up the Ice Barrier lock. But no, it restricted you into... Yeah, I think restriction in general just killed that deck.
I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting because I'm trying to... What upset me about the structure deck specifically is how drastically they changed the direction, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because the structure deck cards just kind of turned it into a not particularly good synchro spam deck.
Yeah.
Of which we have, you know, a bajillion.
I know that.
So it's like, why even bother doing that when you already have this really interesting gimmick of trying to build this? So I've actually thought of what I think good Ice Barrier support would look like.
Ooh,
and you
yes, let's talk about support. I have always, fantasized, I was Konami, and I spearheaded the Ice Barrier support and gave them a better one than a crappy doo-doo one that was given to us.
Do you want to start then?
Okay, yeah, sure, why not? So
you have fantasized about it for years?
Years and years. It haunts my waking dreams. So basically, instead of just giving them actual Ice Barriers, I would continue the lore and the saga of the Ice Barrier of the Dual Terminal series by giving them an offshoot of Ice Barrier. Say, my offshoot was these 4 girls that were, if you know anything about the lore, right, of Ice Barrier, there was the generals and there were there was the generals and there were the mages that where they didn't see eye to eye on how to win the war against the worms, right? The mages, they wanted to use the dragons, but the generals, they did not, fearing whole nother catastrophe with what happened back in the day. So what I would have done was have a 4 offshoot, just 4. It's focused on these 4 main deck monster that play off each other, and levels would also be a pile. Their whole new gimmick would be getting their effects off of being discarded by being sent to the graveyard by Ice Barrier effects, right? Like how Brionek and Gungnir have discard. You discard for the effect. Basically, what their gimmick is they can special summon themselves. They have the corresponding other one on field. It was gonna be a level 4. There was gonna be one that level 4, one level 2, one level 3, and one level 5. So you can always make either a Brionek or a Gungnir, which in my opinion were the cooler one. Trishula, who cares?
Okay.
Churchill is not cool compared to the other ones.
And then you're trying to pitch the other ones to do things.
Yeah, you basically want to loop them into creating a type of. They also have they have a graveyard effect where if they send to the ice barrier, they can quick effect banish themselves for cost, and they have certain attribute, and each one has certain things they can do. The main one would basically let you, if you send to the graveyard by a ice barrier card effect, it could quick effect banish yourself for cost, target one card on your opponent's field, banish it until the end of the turn. Yeah. And then the other ones would be special summon, search, or something. And they would play off each other. Like the level 4 would play off the level 3. The level 2 would play off the level 5. Mm-hmm. So it could always going to make the level 7 Gungnir. That's how it is.
So it's kind of a going second deck, and because you're doing stuff for cost and they trigger off of cost, it's easier to kind of push through things.
Yeah, so you can't really hand trap them well. Mm-hmm. Like Ghost Bell, you can't hand trap them because they're banished for cost, right? Yeah. And then you can't really... I guess you can still Ash them. Yeah. Yeah. Basically like that.
But it's still the idea being that you can still summon the Gungnir, and even if they stop the Gungnir, the guy you pitch is still going to do something.
Yeah. And then I would give them a whole different lore behind it. I would give them their 4 offshoot sisters. They didn't want to deal with the whole war and stuff, so they just what they did was they grab a egg. I want to say there's a 4th Ice Bear dragon, right? So it's unhatched yet. Uh-huh. So I said that it just grab that egg, run away, escape their responsibility of having to deal with the war and stuff, and they build their offshoot brand of their new society of ice bears. But instead, it's just those 4 and their journey through dealing and how to escape the war and stuff. Uh-huh. I guess their naming theme would be Vice Lord. That was my naming theme for them. Vice Lord would consist of vengeful ice lords, right? Interesting. Yeah. But in their text, they would always count as an ice bear monster. So you can still get the rotor search and everything. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. And so I guess a 1 card starter for me would be the level 4, right? If she's special or normal summon, she can special summon a level 5 or lower ice bear monster. So you can special summon the Mirror Revealer, the other one that can special ice bear tuner. Or you can just special any other. That's how you get the spam ability of the original idea of locking your opponent from with the ice bear theme. Or you can either go into a more synchro build where you focus on spamming out synchro summons with the level 2s and getting their graveyard effects, right? Some of them would have effects whenever, especially the tuners. I think my main idea was the tuners, if they're if they're used for synchro material for an ice bearer monster, the monster gains some type of effect, right? Mm-hmm. Say your opponent cannot respond to the ice bearer monster effect activation. Oh, okay. Yeah, stuff like that.
That makes sense.
So if Brownak want to spin something back, you can't respond to it, or blah blah blah. Or what was it? Yeah, it was either you can't respond to it, or if it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can banish it and then special summon another ice bear out. Mm-hmm. So they always replace themselves somehow. And I guess with that, you would want a card that can shuffle back, yeah.
Maybe that's what your new synchro does.
Interesting. No, the new synchro is a little. I kind of want to keep it in theme with the Ice Bear Dragon suit. I guess I wanted to make a better Gungnir because Gungnir's level 7. I know. I can't top that. I know.
Well, when you were saying it was a baby, I was thinking, maybe it's a lower level.
Yeah, so I probably have the egg preform synchro for it, where if it's synchro summon, it can just shuffle back some ice bear monsters, some of your banished ice bear monster to basically search for 1, so you can still get the effect of to discard. And I guess their hatch stage would be probably level 6 because that's Brownic. Yeah. I guess level 5 would be a good starting point.
We don't have one yet. Yeah. Do we have a level 5? Wait.
Yeah, it's DeLorean. Yeah, DeLorean. So it just plays off the ice barriers in itself. So DeLorean, the egg stage would be level 5 like DeLorean. The baby stage would be level 6 like Brownic, and the adult stage would be level 7 like Brownic, Gungnir. And I guess it has like I'm still thinking on like the newer, better version of it, but I still like the level 7 retrain in my head the most. It's just basically a quick effect, since none of them are quick effect for some reason.
Yeah.
It's a quick effect where you can discard up to 2 cards, and then you can... It's basically Mirror Jade, where you can banish your opponent monster. You banish... Okay, so discard 1 card, you banish itself, and 1 card your opponent controls. It's kind of like Cypher Lord Omega, if you know. They can just return themselves back, basically. But your opponent doesn't get to return their stuff back.
Yeah.
So it's all like a good 1-for-1 removal.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. I like how you're trying to loop in the lore and stuff. That's how I can tell that you really do like Ice Barrier.
I love it.
For mine, it was I really like the gimmick. So that's really what I was focused on.
Mm-hmm.
And so what my idea was some sort of synchro monster. For now, let's call it level 8 because they don't have one yet.
Yeah.
And what it says, and people, you or the people in the comments, all one of you, can correct me if this PSCT doesn't work. But basically, it was going to say something like, activate this effect. This effect becomes the effects of all Ice Barrier monsters in your graveyard, but you cannot activate it. So that way you'd get the floodgate effects since they aren't activated, but you can't like special summon a guy from the deck, which was one of the Ice Barrier effects or anything like that. So that's I'm hoping in theory if it was written like that, it would just become all of the different floodgates.
Yeah.
Or maybe it might be a little too strong if it says all of them. So maybe it's you activate it once per turn, target this mini in the graveyard, target like 3 Ice Barrier monsters in graveyard. This effect becomes those monsters' effects, but you cannot activate them. Something like that might be good. And my idea is just now you have that guy. A lot of them still say you have to control another Ice Barrier, so you have to have him and another guy. Which means if we go with the 3 example, you can put your opponent up to 4 different floodgate effects, which is like, probably going with the anti-spell fragrance one.
The attack one.
Yeah, the one that prevents attacks. There's like one more. One makes them untargetable. Ice Barrier monsters untargetable by monster effects.
Ooh, the Macrocosmo one's kind of nice too.
Do they have a Macrocosmos?
Yeah, it's the level 5 Grunard. That guy. For this guy right here for spells. I think it's a Macrocosmo for like spells and traps only, unfortunately. Yeah. So take that, Sky Striker.
Well, I think the cool idea of it would be that you can tailor which ones are in the graveyard to have a more relevant floodgate against whatever opponent you're up against. I'd probably print some other card that helps facilitate dumping them into the graveyard, specifically to help facilitate his effect being relevant to whatever the situation is. So again, if you're up against Sky Striker, you can put in the one that banishes all of the spell traps. Or if you're up against some other deck, then if you're up against Flunder, then there's one that prevents tributing.
Ooh.
So then, wow, good luck, Flunder, playing through that.
Exactly.
And then we can obviously print more that have more niche. But one point I want to make is I don't want to have them have actual good floodgate effects. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I want it to be these really, really specific floodgates. But since you're able to tailor which ones are the ones you'll be inflicting on your opponent, you can pick the really specific ones that very specifically target your opponent and prevent their deck from playing. Like preventing from being able to tribute summon isn't that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's not really not.
Unless it's against Flunder. And Macrocosmos for only spells and traps, that's not that big of a deal unless you're up against Sky Striker. That kind of be my idea, is to create more of them with these specific sort of floodgates specifically tailored. Like maybe one that says cards sent from the deck to the graveyard get banished.
Ooh.
It says that specifically. And it's like, oh, good luck, Tears. Are you going to play through that? No. But it doesn't do anything to well, I guess technically now with the new variants of Sprite, it might matter a little bit, but not really. They'd be able to play around it just fine. But some other floodgate might impede their ability to do it. Maybe you can print a floodgate that says, you can only control one level of monster at a time. Or rather, maybe the opposite. Yeah. You can only control one monster of each level. Then Sprite's like, what do I do?
What do I do?
I literally can't do anything without 2 level 2 monsters.
So kind of like a TC Boo, but for levels, right?
Yeah. Something like that. Which, again, against a lot of decks, genuinely wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
But specifically against Xyz focused decks like sprite would seriously hinder their ability to play.
Mm-hmm.
So stuff like that. Or maybe one that just changes the level of all monsters on the field. Who knows? Whatever. You get the idea.
Yeah.
As we look at the specific decks that have been good over time, and we try to get something that literally just stops them and no one else, so that, they can't just make an unbeatable, ridiculous board every time, but maybe it feels that way to one person that they're playing against, because they happen to be able to get the right floodgate set up.
Ooh, now I gotta go back into like the drawing board for my little thing.
But my whole idea is just I wanted to be able to kind of maintain the integrity of the gimmick.
Yeah, the floodgate gimmick, the ice barriers.
Without making it degenerate, of course. Because that's one of the big problems whenever you have something that's floodgate-oriented. is obviously, if it's,
ban.
If it's just too good of a floodgate, then people are going to get mad. But this one, it's like, the best of one format, it'd be terrible. Because, what are they going to, they just guess?
Yeah.
you just hope. You're just like, okay, well, I'm putting up the anti-spell fragrance, because you always have to do that, which is pretty good, but it's not the end of the world for a lot of people. And then you're putting up the one that basically just kind of turns it into a little bit of a towers, because it can't be attacked, and it can't be targeted by monster effects. Big whoop. And then you get one, random floodgate effect that you hope happens to be relevant. So it's like, you kind of put up a towers, and if it lives a turn, now maybe you can send something that's more relevant to the matchup. Maybe. But if your opponent can deal with it on that first turn, play through, the floodgates you just happen to pick, then, bam, you lose. Get good, son. You should have gotten better at figuring out what your opponent was playing. I don't know. But I don't know. I feel like that could be a very interesting dynamic for the strategy.
Very interesting take on Ice Barrier. I really like your idea, too. Because you still kept in terms of the original gameplay of Ice Barriers being floodgates, while my version is more centric focus on the synchro monster and their effects on how strong they are. But it still doesn't solve the original issue of Ice Barrier to begin with, the spammability of the monsters and how to set up the floodgates. My version is, you already got the floodgates, right? The floodgates are already there, so you want to have them out. They're just second thought, basically. My version is you want to summon the big guys out and possibly get the new device lords affecting graveyard to basically summon that floodgates. I think that's what I was thinking whenever I fantasize about making Ice Barrier support. How do I summon more stuff in order to either lock my opponent out of playing the game, or summon more bigger monster? So that's kind of a both world, basically. Trying to make use of both sides of Ice Barriers and how Konami wants to do with them.
Yeah, because obviously we're not going to undo the current support that exists.
Yeah.
But I feel like the new support kind of helps their spammability a little bit, but it doesn't really help you spam specific monsters. It's basically just the new ones they printed. I'm getting a token. Ooh, token. So I don't know, maybe there's some, because with mine it's basically I'm just trying to describe the direction I want it to go.
Yeah.
I agree, it definitely needs more spammability. And also, if we want to, I think these ideas are not exclusive.
Yeah.
If you see what I'm saying? One of the big reasons why I wanted to do it in this way is because Ice Barriers, after the first turn, having all of these crazy synchro monsters, it's pretty easy to tear apart.
Yeah, it's very easy to break.
If they don't have too strong of a board. And going first, having this floodgatey monster kind of prevents your opponent from setting up too good of a board, so it should be easy enough to crack it on the crackback with your powerful synchro monsters. But maybe having some new cards that fit your sort of theming, lore reasons that help facilitate making those big pushes. And of course, throw a minor floodgate effect on each one of them, and suddenly now it all works together.
Oh, while you're talking, I just came up with a really good idea for an evolution of the level 7 into a level 9, and what that effect is gonna be. You wanna hear it?
Sure.
Oh. Okay, so basically it's the materials is 1 water tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner monster. It's level 9, so you can have it and be any 2 monster, which is the Ice Barrier. They can make level 9 pretty well, either using 1 monster or 2 monster. But most of the time you're going to make 2 monsters, because having more monsters, more tuners is going to give the big guy a really cool effect. He basically gains counters based on the amount of tuners he uses.
Right.
And not once per turn, you can, if your opponent activated card effects, so it's Omni Negate, you can remove its, the
counter.
Yeah, you can remove a counter, negate it, and banish that card.
Yeah.
And it's not once per turn, right? The negate's not once per turn, but I guess the other effects would be. It still has, the other effects would be the level 7, where you can discard one card to banish itself and one card your opponent monster. So it would have like a negate and original banish effects.
But obviously you can only use one of them, because once you tag it out, it never has those counters on it ever again.
Yeah.
So
you gotta think carefully.
It might be a little, I don't know, well here's the kicker, obviously. Is if you make it xenophobic enough, it can be that good and it won't matter.
Yeah.
Because you still have to play Ice Barrier.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my whole thing. Like, you have to use Ice Barrier's tuners specifically. So that's why it would be really good.
Yeah, it would be fair. At that point, you can make it strong enough.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I like about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is we can have cards that, wow, this is just this crazy band card, but it's locked into Reptile, so literally no one plays it.
Like, if you want to get, like, the 2 negates... Just 2 negates, guys. You can push through it.
You want to make Ice Barrier have a card that when summoned is 2 negates and
Not
also Mirror
turn.
Jade and also Redoer, kind of?
Yeah.
And it's like, but it's you have to play
Ice Barrier.
I mean, that could be fun, though.
I guess it still goes back to the meme ability of Ice Barriers, how their Mighty Deck monsters suck, but it's their synchro that's really amazing.
But at least that time you actually have to use the little things to summon it, so you can't play it in something else, in theory.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that'd be fun. Anyway, you gotta get out of here?
Yeah.
Okay, well.
It was fun talking about Ice Barriers. God.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It is fun to
theorize about the future of what could be.
Well, it's like, again, this is not, had nothing to do with us talking. I had just independently also thought, man, Ice Barriers has had a rough go of it. If only they get cool this, stuff. That, and the other thing was different. But anyway, you can get out of here. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
Yep. I think I'm just going to keep talking to myself till I hit an hour.
Gotcha.
So.
See ya, buddy.
But I do appreciate you coming on.
Gotcha.
Bye. Bye. See ya. Well, unfortunately, we've lost our special guest. But I still want to hit an hour, so I'm going to keep talking. I hope you guys enjoyed the 2-part episode last time, assuming that all went according to plan. It's very amusing. We really didn't think we were going to be recording. I'm talking about the episode with Sean, for those who are unaware. Episodes 9 and 10. And we really didn't know we would be recording for 2 hours. We genuinely thought that we were going to only be talking for 1 hour and a couple minutes. And then we just looked over the time and, oh, whoops, we accidentally talked for 2 hours. So that's pretty neat. Pretty cool experience. Anyway, during this conversation, we talked a lot about making support cards for older strategies, making some legacy support. And as probably a lot of people, many of the strategies I enjoy, and even the ones that I'm not super involved with, I often think about what legacy support could be added to make the deck more playable, make the strategy more complete, stuff like that. So that's probably, y'all should prepare yourselves, because this is not the last time we're going to talk about custom cards and the direction that certain strategies should be taken in by Konami. But I hope y'all actually like that, because I do. I think it's very interesting to think about what would make them even more interesting. And I think, for me personally, making them more powerful is pretty straightforward, right? You just put, Mobilize Engage's effect on some card that has their archetype name. You give them, a pot of greed or something, or you give them a couple negates. It's pretty straightforward to make a deck broken. But to make a deck interesting with new support is a lot more challenging, but I think a lot more rewarding. To think about how can we keep it in line with the gimmick without making it too strong that it's, tier 0. Often I think it's actually better to shoot for Rogue personally, because people still want to play rogue decks if there's something interesting about them. And you don't have to worry about it being on the ban list. I don't know. I think more product should be addressed towards that player base, this sort of rogue player who plays decks specifically because they have interesting gimmicks. And I think we should print more decks for that space. And more broadly, I think we as a community can do a better job of making that happen by picking up more pet decks and trying to play more low power formats. I think Team APS made a video recently about non-meta tournaments. I think it's called Heart of the Underdog and Konami lingo, where you just ban a lot of the top decks. And stuff like that is a great place for people to bring things that they just think are fun rather than being strictly competitive, because at least you know you're not going to get absolutely swamped by Tears and Sprite and other very competent strategies. So obviously people will metagame it to try to figure out what the best possible deck is given the restrictions, and there's a fun element to that too. But I think also it opens the door for a lot more people to just play decks that they think are fun or interesting or that have neat gimmicks or good artwork. I've talked a lot before about how much I absolutely adore Cosmo from an art perspective and even from a mechanics perspective. I absolutely love that it's the Wizard of Oz and Star Wars wrapped up into one, and the way they did that is just so cool to me. I really like the direction that they chose to take that, but I also really like the way that they float down and the way they tag out. All that stuff I think is really, really interesting. But I have never bought a Cosmo card. I've never played Cosmo, because Cosmo has never been remotely good while I have been playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! What I did do is I bought Magispector as my fun deck, but I don't really feel the need to have more than one rogue fun deck. Well, I don't even know if Magispector counts as a rogue. I guess technically it'd be everything else. Untiered, unclassified. But Cosmo's probably in that, well, certainly is in that same boat. But if we had more events where the idea was to bring your not even rogue deck, then maybe I would be interested in picking up more than just Magispector. Maybe then I'd also be interested in picking up Cosmo, trying to build some Ice Barrier Brew as some new support came out, that sort of stuff. Trying to make vampires work. I've talked a lot about vampires, now I love their gimmick. And if there was just more ways for me to apply my appreciation for those things in being able to use them against other people at a similar power level, I think that could be really fun. And I think that would encourage me to buy those products, to buy those cards. So I wonder if there's anything Konami's end can do about that. If they try to put more support for underdog format of some variety. In general, I think that they can help do that by having more unique campaigns in Master Duel. Not campaigns, it's not the word